Burner, burner, durner, durner, burner, durner, durner, burner, durner, burner, durner. All right, what's up, everybody? Terminator Juice, otherwise known as Bo, and Impromptu Juice Opinions. I don't know how many people is gonna jump in on a Sunday afternoon, but I was gonna type out some tweets. I was like, yeah, let me just do a juice opinion. So I'll wait for a few people to get in here. I'm gonna show this off real quick. This is a day one copy of GoldenEye on the N64. I would rate this box as, I'm going to go ahead and call it mint condition. Maybe near mint. There are little rubs on the corner. But really no gouges or scratches. Natalia. I don't really want to open it. Oh, it comes open pretty easily. We'll have a look at the insides. I don't have the plastic bag. Pretty good. I would describe this as near mint. There's a few little scratches into the art, but this, however, is mint condition. This is the manual. I doubt I even opened it. I don't like to flip open manuals because I don't want to wrinkle them. Got this. We got that. We got this. And so this is a complete in-box, near mint condition, original GoldenEye N64, day one. And yeah, it's a prized possession of mine. So if you just joined in, I was just showing off my GoldenEye near mint complete inbox. Again, looking pretty good. We'll talk about that. Got a few people in here now, so first, I want to talk, before we get into the main meat. I'm gonna go in a little bit on something I want to talk about on the podcast, and I probably could have done or should have done a separate one on this, but the guys in the Juices Loose crew will know what I'm talking about. But I don't like this use of the term. Oh, where's the chat? Okay, it's still there. Realistic visuals, or going for realism as a as a negative, or as a derogatory phrase, and it kind of bugs me a little bit. It gets thrown around, like games going for more realistic visuals, like that's like somehow makes them all, or makes a lot of these games the same or samey looking, or no artistic merit or anything like that. And that, to me, that's a pretty lame take. I know back in the early days, because I mean, talk about going for realistic visuals. I mean, that's a great example right there. Even Ocarina of Time, in aspects, went for realism, for what the N64 could do. And you know, GoldenEye was an amazing looking game. It was revolutionary, not just in gameplay, but the split screen, but also in how it looked and sounded. So lately, it gets thrown around when it comes to like Sony first party games, a lot of third party games, and it's like, yeah, I love art styles. First and foremost, you guys follow me at all, you know I love like a unique art style, like Breath of the Wild, for example. Everwild, that rare game that was not real, that may or may not still be in development or has been canceled. I think that's one of the best looking art styles I've ever seen. If that was a video game, I would hope it would be a good game, but just based on the trailers, that's one of the best looking quote unquote games I've ever seen. So I love art styles. I love anything that looks unique, like Kena Bridge of Spirits has you. It's looks like CG. What's up, Donnie? Looks like CG animation kind of style, but I love the character designs in that game. Let's see, like a game like Returnal that has a really great art style, but leans more towards making things look a little more real. And I don't know, just to me, it like to just say, oh, that's just going for realistic visuals. Like I pointed out to the group chat, the Juices Loose group chat, like Cyberpunk, God of War, Horizon, Days Gone, Last of Us, Gears 5, all those games get lumped into the, oh, they're going for realistic visuals, but none of those games look the same. You're not going to confuse Cyberpunk with any of those games, or even like GTA to Cyberpunk. They both have very unique styles. Yeah, Everwild. Yeah, we'll see. I think they either canceled it or started over or something. But um, to say that these games are imply or say it in a derogatory way, like there's no merit to the artistic style. Like Horizon Forbidden West has a very uh, over color or color saturation, uh, brighter colors. That doesn't look like the real world. The water effects do. They made the water look really real. It looks like real waves. But you're not gonna go into the woods or something and be like, oh, this looks like Horizon. Like exaggerated colors, over saturate or over brightness. There's definitely an art style. Like you don't Aloy looks proportionately like a human being, and they really went in with skin textures and stuff. But and maybe they're trying. Maybe it's just the limitations. But you're not gonna confuse Aloy with like a real human. To me, she looks more like a really high quality CGI person. Like if Disney animation or Pixar went for making an actual human being, I feel like it would look like in the realm of Aloy, or characters in Horizon Forbidden West. Maybe it's just the limitations of the hardware. They want it to look like an actual human being, and maybe someday they will. For me, the games most two games come to mind with like absolutely striving for looking like the real world, as real as they can possibly get. That's Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Last of Us Part 2. Those games are really going all in on creating a realistic looking world. Red Dead, I think, looks more realistic. It's probably the most realistic game. Um, and then Last of Us, obviously, their idea of what the world would look like if a post-apocalyptic world, even Horizon post-apocalyptic, and but all three of those games look unique to each other. What makes them look unique? It's the art direction. It's the use of colors. It's the what they're trying to achieve visually. Like I said, the Red Dead, to me, they're just trying to make the most realistic looking 3D world that's ever been put into a game. That look to me appears to be their goal. Um, but if you look at Red Dead compared to Horizon, they don't look anything alike. I mean, maybe the skies do, maybe some distant mountains, but the actual in game, um, yeah, the color in Horizon, I would say even Cyberpunk. Like we had a debate about this, and I'm playing on PS5. I'm not playing with the 4090 on PC with everything on ultra ray tracing, everything set to max global illumination, all the ray tracing turned on. To me, Cyberpunk has always looked very unique. A lot of yellows, a lot of orange, a lot of reds. The city does not look like a real world city. Obviously, it's a futuristic city, but the color usage, just how bright the everything is, it doesn't look real. Maybe that's hardware again. Maybe the ray trace version. Um, but that's a very unique looking game. It doesn't look like, you're not going to confuse it with GTA 5. If you saw screenshots and you blurred out the main, or it's first person, you can play GTA 5 first person. Like, they're very unique looking games. So to discredit them as just going for realistic visuals, like God of War, it has some of the most realistic looking humans, which they even use the likenesses of actors, of known actors. And but yeah, that's a fantastical like setting. That doesn't look like the real world. But I think what it is, honestly, is I think people associate realistic visuals with any high fidelity, high quality textures, realistic lighting. I guess probably is the big culprit here, because even Minecraft with realistic lighting, there's shots that, I mean, it looks real. So lighting can really impact. But to me, it's, you're seeing like objects that look like actual 3D objects in a 3D space. And I said this about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I thought the characters for the first time in the Xenoblade series look like actual 3D objects that I'm looking at. Not saying they look like completely 2D, but with the lighting that's applied to them, and they just feel like they exist realistically in the world that's been created. They're cell shaded, kind of. They're like anime looking CG anime, but they actually look like 3D objects in this 3D space. And I think people associate something that looks really high quality or visually very clear, but also looks very 3D, as looking realistic. And I just want to give a shout out to a lot of good artists and art direction in some of these games that I feel gets brushed off as, oh, they're just going for realism. That's easy. It's just they just make something look real. Like I said, I disagree with that. I understand you have to have something that differentiates cell shading, hand drawn, pixel art, you know, something like that, versus, or like animation, like CG animation, hand drawn animation, versus, you know, something that, hey, they want to make a tree look like an actual tree, like, yeah, that's definitely going for realism, but there's almost needs a different term, because you can't just lump everything together. Because even like Street Fighter 6, you could say the backgrounds look like they're going for realism, especially compared to Street Fighter 4. But I doubt anybody's going to say, oh, that's just, there's no art direction, that's just going for realism. Like, there's still exaggerated aspects that are not of the real world. So because even like the 2D HD games, what makes those games and that visual style stand out is the use of lighting. It looks like you're looking at an actual 3D diorama, basically. I th- and you could argue that it looks like a realistic diorama that you're moving through. The Lego Movie, there was people who thought that was real stop motion animation of Legos. That's probably the most realistic CG animated movie of all time. And it's Lego characters. Just because of the realistic lighting and stuff. But it still took a lot of work, and it was all CG except for the live action stuff. But it's just funny that people thought that was actual stop motion Legos, and it's actually CG. So that's just an example, but still took a lot of artistry. Took a lot of work to get that right. What's up, Clocked It? So I just don't like to lump all these games into one derogatory term. I feel like it's a negative now. I will agree, like in the early days, games games that went for realistic visuals back when it was, early, like PS1, PS2 era, even some PS3 games. Those games don't age very well. We'll get into the aging well right now and blend it into graphics and visuals. Is those games don't hold up. They don't look as good. over the you know, not test of time, I guess test of time, but whereas like I feel like 16-bit games still look good. You don't need to really do much to them. Just get them like just like on the Virtual Console or even Super NES games. There's a little bit. There's up-resing. They're running. They look cleaner than they would if you ran them on native hardware on a modern TV. But 16-bit games to me, they still look as good as the day they came out. Um, Not all of them, but some better than others. And you always have to have that thing in your mind, for back then, like, damn, this looks good. This was early Super Nintendo. Damn, like that looks really good. Um, and I think basically this whole, especially with visuals, staying on the visuals, but games aging. I think once you hit the N64, PS1, Sega Saturn, once you start doing 3D, before like textures and stuff were like, you mean the original Star Fox, almost, I don't even know if it had, there was a few textures like the asteroids and stuff. um if you look back at some of those now, you're like, oof, like that looks a little rough, like Goldeneye, the face placement around the head. If you really look at it, I mean, it looks pretty funny. Back in the day, though, that shit blew your mind. Like, man, there's a face on that character. Holy shit, that kind of looks like uh, Sean Bean and shit. Like, that was cool, but because they're going for realism, looking at a game like that now, especially like in crystal clear quality, it shows its age. Or yeah, it shows its age, just like Mario 64. The 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 level detail, the lower detail Mario model from when the camera gets a certain distance away. You didn't notice it on the N64 because it was so blurry and low res. When you put it in HD, um, you're like, holy shit, that low quality Mario model, like, holy crap, that looks bad. Funny enough, when Super Mario World came out, many reviewers thought the game didn't look that great for a new 16-bit title. I mean, that one didn't push the Super NES as much as it could have. It still looks good today, but I never felt it was like visually the wow factor of like Link to the Past or like Final Fantasy 3. That's what it was called. Those games was like, holy shit. Where Mario was definitely a safer, I would say, use of the hardware, just like with New Super Mario Brothers U on the Wii U. That didn't take anywhere near advantage of the Wii U's power. But I mean, Super Mario World, especially in Mario Maker in HD, looks amazing. But it doesn't quite have the depth, that maybe people were hoping. Like when you look at Donkey Kong Country, of the layers of the snow and all that, like that. That was a wow factor game. Of course, that was more towards the later end of the Super Nintendo's life. I don't know if it's the later end. I think the first game came out in '94 or '95. But yeah, but it's just, I feel like really started with the early 3D era, where they had a lot of limitations on what they could do. I feel like with the law of diminishing returns with new generations, I feel like it's the same applies to the games, the diminishing negative returns of games aging. Like Uncharted 2, I played it in 2016. So I think that game came out in 2011. So I played it 5 years after it came out on the PS3, and I was like, ooh. It's like, it looks decent, but it's already starting to show its age. But now Uncharted 4, which came out in 2016, I just played it the other 2 weeks ago. I'm like, man, this game still looks good, So the law of diminishing returns also applies to the negative returns of games. I think the closer you get to whatever the point of where visuals, it's like it's really hard to impress anymore. Those games are going to look better years down the road versus like early PS1 games, 10 years later. Or, shit, I don't even think 10 years for PS1 games. I never really thought PS1 games looked that great. There was some early wow factor games like Warhawk and Resident Evil, um, but there was some later games when after I had the N64 for a while, my buddy picked up this off-road racing game, and you just literally the draw distance was so close to the trucks, the vehicles, like you really couldn't see where the track was, especially at night. They tried to do this realistic dynamic lighting, and you just couldn't see where the track couldn't. You just couldn't. Even like Dreamcast, Project Gotham Racing, or not, sorry, Metropolis Street Racer. Even when I was playing that game and loving it, there was some night races where I really had trouble seeing where I was supposed to go because they just didn't have the fidelity, the lighting, and the resolution to really make it clear. They were going for pretty realistic looking car racing game. And even when I was playing that game nonstop, I still was like, damn, I cannot see it on this track. Like I wish it looked better. Not better, but I wish I could see which way I was supposed to turn a little more clear. But anyway, so I'm going to start with PS2. One of the most, to me, one of the most legendary, I guess, PS2 games. I know some people would have other games, but for me, it's this game right here. It's the only PS2 game I ever bought. The Redbox version was out, but luckily the store Myers I was at, they had one that was the original, and it was $20. Picked it up, borrowed a PS2 and played it and beat it. Loved it, blew my mind. I would say this is a perfect example of I don't know how to phrase this. I feel like I love the game. It was my favorite PlayStation exclusive till a couple years ago. In memory, like the game had some issues, it had some frustrations, wonky ass control setup, some weird animations, but I figured it out. I got it. I adapted. I beat the game, and it left a mark on me. But I think a lot of what made Shadow of the Colossus such a big deal was what it achieved on the PS2 from a visual standpoint. Now I know the music's great, the idea, the concept's great. The idea of taking down these giant Colossus beings, trying to figure out their weak spots. Really great game design. But I feel like its biggest draw was what it did visually for a PS2 game. And this came out 2005. I think did I get it 2005? No, I got it end of 2005 or early 2006. So I would say the biggest reason this game got hyped was what it did for the PS2 visually, like what it achieved with these giant Colossus with like the hair and all that. Like you never expected the PS2 to be able to do something like that, and they did it. They did it at 10, 15 frames per second, but they did it, and I played it and I enjoyed it. And until I want to say Ghost of Tsushima, well, no, I'd say The Last of Us passed Shadow of the Colossus as my favorite PlayStation game, but it was my favorite for a while. Last of Us came out, probably put Shadow at 2, and then years later I played Ghost of Tsushima. I was like, man, this might be my favorite PlayStation exclusive. And then I played Returnal. I'm like, damn, this might be my favorite PlayStation exclusive. Then I played God of War Ragnarok, and I'm like, no, this is my favorite PlayStation exclusive. So it's dropped down the list, but let's not forget that in 2016 or 17, this came out. This is a full visual remake. They used the original game code, and I should have booted up because I can't remember. It either defaulted to the original PS2 control scheme or it defaulted to a new scheme. I can't remember. And I start playing the game, and obviously with the new visuals, 60 FPS on PS4 Pro, I was playing the game, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try the original controls. And I was not enjoying the game. I'm just going to be straight with you. I don't know what they were thinking with the button layout. I can't remember. Triangle was like to shoot. It was really weird. Because it's, I mean, they had the same buttons. The PS2 had the same button amount of buttons and dual analogs and everything as the PS4, but I was not enjoying the game, and it was like really hurting my. It was hurting my soul because, um, I'm like, this is my most treasured PlayStation exclusive, and I'm not having fun playing it. It's just not fun to play. Like this, like holding the hitting triangle to like shoot your bow, just it just didn't feel right. I can't remember the aim if it was on left stick, right stick. Well, I went to the options, or I either watched a video first, and I found a modern control scheme. I forget what they call it, and I switched to that, and I mapped some buttons, and I'm like, instantly, oh man, I could play the game. I want to say I used the triggers to aim. I know gripping was a trigger, like on the original, like to hold on. I might have kept that, but I switched whatever the default was. I might have switched a couple buttons around, and it just was infinitely more enjoyable to play. Um, Now, does that mean that my memories in 2006 of this playing this amazing classic game, my buddy's PS2, I had it for about 2 months, and I played through it first full time once, and I got pretty close on the second on hard mode, I believe. Um, no, that like I got through it, I adapted, and I enjoyed the game thoroughly. Still in my mind, it's still like that experience is still one of the better like gaming experiences or gaming memories I have. But somebody who loves it, I play this. I couldn't do it with the jank default controls. I just couldn't do it. So when I switch, whatever Blue Point did, they changed some stuff around, made it a default, not a default, but they made it a selectable control option. I enjoyed the game so much more. Um, and I played through the whole game, beat it once. I will say this is one of those games that it's like once you know the solution, it's less exciting just doing it again versus trying to figure it out. There was two Colossus that I could not remember the solution. All the others I knew right away, and it did diminish a third playthrough, I guess. Even though it looks so much better and 60 FPS, and even with the better control setup, I still didn't enjoy the game as much as I expected. And honestly, when they announced it, I wasn't that excited. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not like the biggest advocate of remakes, even though one of my most anticipated games this year is RE4 Remake, and RE2 Remakes was my game of the year in 2019. I'm not like clamoring for remakes. I'm not clamoring for games to be remade or re-released. I never am. So when Shadow of the Colossus was announced, I was still kind of in my Sony hater mindset. I wasn't that excited. Let's see. I'm not into first-person view in games. I prefer third-person. Do you think I will like Metroid Prime on GameCube? I really enjoyed Other M. You're not gonna like Metroid Prime. It depends. How much are you a fan of dual analog controls? Because Metroid Prime has single analog controls. Basically, you move forward and turn left and right with the left stick. The right stick's used for switching weapons. It's hard to say, but Other M's not great in my opinion. Prime is an amazing game, an amazing experience. But you already said you don't like first person view. It's a first person exploration adventure game, so I guess the only way to know is to try. I prefer the Wii version, the trilogy with the motion aiming. But thanks for dropping by. I haven't seen you here before. But anyway, like I was saying, Shadow of the Colossus, it had lost something for me because it's just the design of the game. It was designed to have to figure out how to take down these Colossus. That's pretty much the main element of the game. It's like a puzzle that figure out what to do. How do I get this? How do I hurt this thing? How do I get on this thing? That was the puzzle. Once you know it, then it's missing a huge element. It's It's like watching a movie with like a really awesome surprise ending versus watching it a second time knowing the ending. Now, some movies, like Sixth Sense, they put a lot of little nuggets in there for you to catch on the second viewing. Fight Club, same way. But you'll never get that back, that first time shock back of a twist in a movie or a game. Like The Last of Us, once you know the opening and what happens, you'll never have that. I mean, it still can hit you and be emotional, but you'll never have that shock and awe again. It's gone forever. So for me, Shadow of the Colossus might be a bad example. Not only did the original controls not work for me at all, um, I just kind of went through the games like I was just like on autopilot. Other than, like I said, the 2 out of the 16, I knew what to do. Well, it was just like, oh, I'm just kind of going through the paces again. I'm just playing through the game again. And even though it was only $40, I necessarily don't know if I'm happy that I bought it. So it was a one-time play, and I'm kind of, maybe someday in the future I'll play it. But that's an example of a game, a cherished game for me, fond memories. I play a remake, and the original controls just were like, ugh, like how did people play it? Like how did I play this game with this control layout? It just it's nothing to do with the game design. It's not a knock on the original game. It doesn't tarnish my memories. That's the biggest thing I want to point out. It doesn't tarnish its legacy for me. Now, if somebody new, let's say a 16-year-old kid plays Shadow of the Colossus on the PS4 and those default controls, is like, this is stupid. This is trash. I don't want to play this. I'm not gonna be like, oh wow, how could you say such a thing? This is such a legendary classic game. How could you dare say that? But yeah, that's for that game. I think there's definitely games that are best played once versus games played repeatedly. As much as I'd hate to say it, Xenoblade Chronicles X for me was like, I don't know if I want to start this game over. Like that was an experience. And all the post game stuff. I have so many hours in post credits. I don't know if starting that game again would give me anything. God of War Ragnarok, I 100% it. I got the platinum trophy. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I put 54 hours in. I did everything you could do. Basically, I beat all the enemies. Now I didn't play it on a harder difficulty, but I don't know if that game's really gonna call me to play it again anytime soon. Versus Breath of the Wild. I played Breath of the Wild for 2 hours last night on my third playthrough, and I'm gonna play as soon as I end this podcast stream. I'm gonna play more Breath of the Wild. I had like 68 shrines on my third playthrough, and I'm really enjoying it. So let's get into it. GoldenEye. I got some other games from the N64 era. Some nice boxes. To me, and Clocked It's here, like to me, the N64 was GoldenEye, it was Ocarina of Time, it was Super Mario 64, and then a bunch of games I rented. But GoldenEye was the main thing for me. Didn't really need anything else after GoldenEye. Like me and my buddies would just play it split screen all the time. I went back, I hooked my N64 up to my OLED a couple years ago. Messed around with it a little bit, and I played GoldenEye. I was reminded at how extreme the auto aim is, and I really struggled playing it. Using the C sticks to strafe, use the left stick to turn. It's definitely still playable, and I guarantee you, if I gave it a few hours, I could probably be pretty adequate at it. But at the same time, it's going to be a struggle in the beginning. So the biggest thing I want to say is, if somebody's young or somebody's new to a game that's older and they're like, really, you guys think this game was great? Like, really, this is like, this isn't anything special, or this is tough to play, or like, I never got offended by that. Now, Robert playing Ocarina of Time and not even riding Epona, yeah, that bugged me. I ain't gonna lie. So I'm not gonna say like, I don't know if those two things collate, but it did bug me a little bit that he missed, rescuing Epona, which is like a big iconic moment for me. and she's in the damn title screen, the awesome title screen, Link riding the horse. But other than that, like Ocarina of Time, my going back to that, I played that one too. I will say there was one aspect that always annoyed me, and annoyed me even more, I guess, now, was that damn Ganon fight on in the tower where the floor would disappear, and when a couple of the tiles would disappear, you had to jump at an angle, like the tile was at an angle, and you had to like it auto jumped, and if you didn't do it just right, it was just a too far of a distance, Link, and you'd fall. Like I'd fall all the time, then you had to climb back up, start to fight. You're doing the reflecting thing. I never liked that. I always thought it was frustrating. Thought it was a bad choice to have the tiles fall in a way that made it really difficult to jump back. It was just unnecessarily frustrating. And so I played that section. Actually, it was the GameCube version because I was selling my special edition. I got like 75, $80 for it, which is probably like double that now. So I wanted to play it, make sure it worked, and I was in that spot. I'm like, man, I know it's still one of my favorite. It's probably top 3 favorite gaming memories of all time. Playing Ocarina of Time. Beat it Christmas. Was it Christmas Day or New Year's Eve? I can't remember, but I still have my Christmas lights up in my room, and it's one of my fondest memories. But it's still, I can admit that I never really liked that. I thought that was a bit of a annoyance. They could have tweaked that a bit in the game development and made that less frustrating. And then when I replayed, that's where my save file was on GameCube right before Ganon, and I was like, man, this is not fun. Like this section aged. It wasn't great to begin with. I mean, I don't say it wasn't great, but I didn't like that aspect of it back then. I really don't like it now. If I wouldn't mind them to tweak that. That would be one of the things they would tweak. But still, it doesn't change my memories. It doesn't change the legacy of Ocarina of Time. It doesn't change, just like with remakes or new version. It doesn't erase the legacy of these classic games. And it'll forever. I mean, Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, maybe GoldenEye split screen with my buddies. That might be my top 3 most fond gaming memories. If I really thought, like Star Fox, first time I saw this intro to Star Fox blew my mind. There's a lot of cherished memories. I'm not that type of person that feels like that gets attacked just because somebody now doesn't like a game or doesn't like an aspect of a game now. And then getting back to GoldenEye, those controls were what they were because the analogs and N64 only had one analog stick. Like even Rare knew to have if you have 2 N64 controllers, you could play with dual analogs. Even back then in 96 or 7, I mean the game was out in 97, but when they were developing it, they knew that, hey, this dual analogs, that's a cool way to play. If the N64 had 2 analog sticks, I have a feeling that would have been the main default control option. So it's hard for me to just sit there and say, how dare you demand like dual analogs or modern controls when they already did that back when the game came out. You just had to have 2 N64 controllers. I've actually never tried it, to be honest. I thought about hooking it up today and trying it just for the hell of it. So they knew, and they did the best they could. Even on Dreamcast, one of my favorite games is MDK2. Dreamcast only had 1 analog stick. They used the face buttons for, I want to say, was it moving forward, back, strafing, and then the left stick was aiming up, down, left, and right. I can't remember. And then you had the 2 triggers, and then the D-pad did some. As much as I love that game, like even back then, I was like 99, 2000, whatever year that was. That's probably one of my top 3. That's probably top 3 Dreamcast games. And even then, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a compromise for this controller. If this controller had dual analogs, this would play better. And I almost picked up the PS2 version and borrowed a PS2 to play it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody saying, Uh, I'll read that in a second. I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody saying, you know what, these controls don't play that great. Like this is not a great control scheme, because there's so many aspects to it. You've had 25 years of controller innovations, new controller, more buttons, more ergonomics, more comfortable controls. The analog stick placement for some people. They like the Xbox slash GameCube style. That some people like the PlayStation, but we've had plenty of innovations, and going back to play a game that was working around limitations, controller limitations. I don't think there's anything unfair or wrong about saying, yeah, this feels a little weird. I have an analog stick, but it's just a button that goes up in increments, and I'm strafing with the right stick and turning with the left stick. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, wow, this feels weird. Like this feels, how the hell did you play like this? Like that's only people who didn't think nothing of it are the guys like Clocked It and T, who've been playing N64 consistently, since then, never stopped. Um, for me, I went even the GameCube, with a lot of its forced inverted controls. As soon as I got an Xbox, and definitely the 360 PS3 generation, where inverted controls were not the standard, where pressing up made you look up, pressing down made you look down. I have trouble going back to inverted controls on games like Wind Waker. That's basically, I sold my copy of Wind Waker on GameCube because I have the HD one on Wii U, mainly because I'm never going to play it again because of the inverted controls. So I don't think there's anything crazy or ridiculous about somebody saying, "Man, this control stream is weird as hell and doesn't really feel right." Yeah, anybody gave it enough time, they're gonna get used to it, but you're gonna be fighting muscle memory for reasons I feel shouldn't have had to happen. Obviously, the Xbox version has the standard control, or modern controls, but they don't have the N64 controller. So I fully appreciate having all the default control options. If you happen to be lucky enough to have the N64 controller, I still wouldn't play it that way, personally. So, and I haven't tried it. We didn't get the expansion pass yet. We talked about it, the Juice is Loose crew. So I haven't played it personally. I just know, like going back to Metroid Prime, 1 and 2 on GameCube. It's just really weird to have your character turning, looking around with the left stick. So I have no issues with somebody like, man, this feels weird. Like this is not ideal. This is a weird way to play a game, because it is. And like I said, Rare already knew it. That's why they had a dual analog option. And I don't know why I never tried it, but I'm curious how it plays. If it is full analog, aiming and stuff, does the left stick move strafe you in the right stick full turn, or does the right stick strafe and the left stick still turns you? I'm curious about that now. And just like, here's an example of something non-gaming that I relate to this. Not, the game itself. I mean, I don't think anybody's really complaining about the gameplay or anything. Obviously, visually, it's an N64 game in higher resolution. The faces they're all stretched around a polygon head. I mean, it's part of the charm now, and back then it blew our minds. But if somebody laughed at that now, I don't see anything wrong with it. But here's a real world comparison to this. And again, I don't think this diminishes GoldenEye's legacy. It's still one of the greatest multiplayer first-person shooters. It set a new standard, and it just started basically the first-person shooter on console craze. So I grew up. My dad would always buy old cars, so I've driven a '63 Chevy Nova, a '72 Chevy pickup. I've driven a '55 Ford pickup. My buddy's dad, when we did a road trip. A '78 Jeep Wrangler, and couple of those. My dad's friend had a was it a 63, 64 Corvette. I mean, legendary car right there. The convertible, the Stingray, and absolutely legendary car. And the Chevy, it was the first Chevy Nova, I believe, in '63. The '72 pickup and the Jeep. Yeah, all had one thing in common. And none of them had power steering, and I don't think any of them had power brakes. So those cars, especially like the Stingray, like that's a legendary car in the U.S. I don't know about in overseas or Europe and stuff. Legendary car, sports car, rear wheel drive, 2-seater, convertible. Independent front suspension, fiberglass body, lots of horsepower, probably like 300 horsepower or something. The car could probably do like 110, maybe 120 miles per hour. And even though those things are worth a fortune, hundreds of thousands of dollars for an original condition with low mileage, they're super rare. Just go to any car lot. Go to a Toyota dealer, test drive a Camry, 4-door Camry. It's going to have better acceleration. It's going to be faster top speed. It's going to ride better. It's going to corner better. It's just going to be a very comfortable ride. Drive a classic car, and I'll tell you what, you're going to be in for an eye-opening experience if you've never driven like a true classic car. Trying to turn the damn thing, no power steering. The suspension's rough as hell. You feel every bump, especially in the sports cars. Even like a 80s Corvette, you feel every freaking bump. They were the most powerful engines back then. Like, it was probably one of the fastest cars. Pretty average. My truck does like 120. My Toyota Tacoma does like 120 miles per hour. So it doesn't change the legacy of a Corvette or an old pickup truck or the Chevy Nova. But if you drive one, you're going to be like, holy shit, this is a rough ride. Like, this is not smooth. You got a big bench seat. You have a only waist seat belts. You got a big metal dash. Like, big old thin metal steering wheel, or I don't know what they had on this. Some were leather. Trying to turn that damn thing and no power steering. It's not a pleasant experience. But guess what? It's still There's still legendary, iconic cars. Like the '57 Chevy is still a legendary, iconic car. But if you drove one with the original suspension, original engine, original everything, it's not going to be a very good ride. And you're going to probably want to drive your modern car way more than you'd want to drive it, other than the cool factor or a once-in-a-lifetime experience of driving an old car like that. You're not going to be like, no air conditioning, barely any heat, like no real air flowing, one little speaker in the dash, like a lot of wind noise, loud exhaust. It's cool, but it's not going to be your everyday driver. So my question is, obviously if you've driven a classic car, you're going to know. Even like a '93 Dodge Viper, which was like $100,000 supercar, isn't really that fast. And it handles like crap. And it has the cheapest interior ever put in like an expensive supercar. It's factual. It's just, it's an iconic thing. It's a unique thing. It's more rare, but especially in good condition. But it's not a car you're going to want to drive. So that's how I view this whole thing. Now, if you want to talk about like gameplay and stuff, like, yeah, I don't think there's any. Yeah, you could argue, and I could probably think of examples where gameplay stuff's like, yeah, that was a limitation of the early days of 3D gaming. Like Mario 64, the camera couldn't quite get spots sometimes. It made platforming harder than it probably needed to be. Just devs trying to figure out 3D gaming. It's not going to feel as good as like Mario Odyssey. Like Mario Odyssey to me is the definitive third-person platforming controls ever. Like, I don't think there's any. I think clocked it still here. I'm thinking you'd probably agree. The game just controls like buttery smooth. Like that's how I try to describe Returnal to people who don't want to believe me or don't want to admit. Um, Imagine Imagine the guys who did the controls for Mario Odyssey made like a third person shoot 'em up, fast paced game. That's how good Returnal feels. And luckily Robert played the game. He agreed with me. But Mario Odyssey is like the best controlling third person platforming game ever at this point. Will it be topped? Maybe. Definitely wasn't topped by Bowser's Fury, but go back and play Mario 64 and you could tell like, hey, this is a bit rough around the edges, still amazing, still fun. But that, the camera was frustrating back then. It's frustrating now in areas, trying to cross like the desert level on the pyramid, making the dam. You had to like make a damn jump, and like you'd never get the camera, so you were running in a straight either towards the screen or straight sideways. I think the Boo, God, I don't know what that's called, on top of the ghost house where you had to get on the roof and you had to like crawl out some narrow ass shit to get a star. Yeah, like that was harder than it needed to be because of the camera system. And as great as the controls, they still play great. I mean, Mario 64 is still fun to play with the triple jump, the backflip, all that. It's just gotta see, gotta see. I meant to say Odyssey, but gotta see refined it in such a way that it's the new standard. Like, it just feels so good. Now, this is an example where I don't think Mario 64 is like, oh man, this is unplayable. Like, not even close. But there's definitely a difference, and you can definitely tell. Like I said, controller innovations, better. Time has taught these developers things, improved upon each person. Somebody who improves something, then somebody follows suit and improves on that. Again, it's like science where they keep using each other's research to advance things. When people are long dead that had a breakthrough, they're still using that breakthrough to have more breakthroughs. It's stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of, just so you know, like I don't go back and play old games very often, rarely ever. Breath of the Wild's like the biggest exception to that for me ever by miles. Like, I mean, I got close to 400 hours. I'm on my third playthrough, and I 120 shrines on the first two. One was hard mode, one was regular, and now I'm playing on PC the emulated version on regular, and going for 120 shrines and divine beast and all that. So I'm not usually one to go back and play games. So for me, it's almost like when you haven't seen anybody in a while and either they lost weight or gained weight. If you see them every day, you don't notice it. But if you see them like 2 years later and you're like, holy, or like kids, they grow up, you don't notice it as much when you see them every day. But if you haven't seen like a second cousin or something in like 3-4 years, and then you see them, you're like, holy crap, you grew up. Like my aunt's second husband's kids, they're all older than me, and like we didn't get together. They were like, for Christmas Eve, we used to always go to my aunt's house. They were building a new house, so we didn't go for 2 years. Then COVID happened. So let's say 4 Christmases. This girl, Hannah, she was just a cool, like 12 or 13-year-old kid. She was really like cool to talk to for her age. She was just like she's just like a cool kid. She was just cool. I see her like I didn't know it was her. Go there, last Christmas, 2 Christmases ago, and walk in, and I see this like gorgeous, like taller blonde, and I'm like, who the hell is that? And then I hear somebody say her name, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like this little cool little girl is now this like 5'9", just gorgeous blonde. I was like, holy crap! Like she's like 19 or 20. And I was like, holy crap, like, wow, she grew up. But anyway, got a little distracted. The difference between years between playing a game and if you play it regularly, like a couple times a year, let's say you play Ocarina of Time a couple times a year, or, boot it up versus going 15 years without playing it. It's a quite a different situation there. Um, so I guess just gonna finalize this by saying, would anyone want to test the online? If I had it, I would, Ipsters. If I had it. Um, I have this version. Can we play this online? um, I don't find it like I feel like I need to defend the classic games from newer people, younger gamers, stuff like that. I don't know. I kind of see, like I said, I see where they're coming from. Totally see where they're coming from with Goldeneye. Like it's just weird to go back to an era with one analog stick and the way that they had that turn, like our control, I should say. Like that's just strange. Dogacy, Odyssey, you mean? I mean, a bunch of people came up. T said it. I don't know who said it first. Did Donkey say it first? I don't know, but yeah, I just don't feel like I feel like I can put myself in the shoes of other people. I don't know. I feel like I've always had that skill or talent, if you will, to kind of see through other people's perspectives, and I kind of feel like I get it. Just like the Xbox showcase. I mean, probably get into this on the podcast. They said what games were going to be there, what developers were going to be there. There's 5 games. Obviously, Hi-Fi Rush was a surprise, but even Phil Spencer came out recently and said that they got to do better than what they did in 2022. When you go from Halo Infinite and then you have Crossfire X paid exclusive trash, like I think the Metacritic's like 30 or 40. It's just a trash. It made a lot of people's top worst games of the year list. And you had Grounded's official release, even though people had been playing it for at least a year, maybe 2 years. Pentiment was really highly rated, but a very niche title. I mean, I've seen multiple people say that. And then there was like another something Dusk game. I don't even know what kind of game it is. I never even heard of it. So like from a first party major games standpoint, that wasn't a year to really celebrate. I mean, the previous year you had Psychonauts 2, you had Forza Horizon 5, and you had Halo Infinite. That's a pretty good year. It was all in the last few months of the year, but still. And then you go 2022 and you have what I call niche titles, which I think they are. And one of them, I guess High on Life was another. That's another exclusive. I don't know if Microsoft owns the studio or if they just paid. That was mixed reviewed. But they didn't have like a big title. They didn't have you know anything even close to like a Horizon, God of War, Gears. What else is Xbox? Xbox doesn't have a whole lot of like mainstay IPs, but I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody who bought a Series X wanting to get that big, epic game from Microsoft. I kind of like it. Controls are a bit pooey, poopy. Sorry. Yeah. But anyway, getting into the like, I can see why somebody, and I'm not, obviously, dudes. They want everything to be mature and stuff. Personally, that's not how I view it. But I can understand if having the world's most powerful console, spending $500, and then if you bought a expansion proprietary expansion memory for 230, you got like $800 into this Xbox. Maybe you bought an Elite 2 controller, so there's another $200. And they're coming out with, I mean, really, I know that I have no problem with AA, no problem with niche games or anything like that. But I made this comparison. Imagine going from Metroid Dread, the next major game was Fire Emblem Engaged. Like, no Splatoon 3, no Xenoblade Chronicles 3, no Arceus, no Scarlet and Violet. I guess Mario Strikers, Nintendo Switch Sports, probably no Kirby, Forgotten Land. You know, maybe you have Mario, maybe between Dread and Fire Emblem Engage, you had Mario Strikers, Nintendo Switch Sports, um, some games along that line. Like I don't think, like you're telling me you wouldn't rather have Splatoon 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, two Pokemon games, and I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Maybe not. Like there's not I don't know, there's nothing to argue there. Like that it was just a it wasn't a it wasn't what I would call a amazing year. Whether you liked the couple games that came out or not, it doesn't change. Even Phil Spencer admitted it wasn't what they want to have more games out than what they've been putting out. Um, yeah, I agree. I mean, even the Virtual Console playing that with that damn Classic Controller Pro. That's how freaking Robert played Call of Duty somehow. It didn't translate well. So yeah, I get it. The N64 games translating to a dual stick controller, it just doesn't feel as good. But at the same time, personally, the last time I boot up the N64, it just feels weird in general having just one analog stick. The games were designed around it. That doesn't mean that uh, that's that's not an excuse. Like that's a reason why they play that way, but that's not an excuse for somebody saying, "Man, this feels a little wonky." Like, what is this control scheme like today? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like I don't blame somebody for playing using the right analog stick is just like digital buttons, and that doesn't convert well. And even playing with the official controller, it still is weird to people who didn't grow up with that. You know, like I, is someone like Robert's age grabbed an N64 control, I wouldn't expect him to be like instantly get it and instantly like it. Like I would expect some like, wow, this is weird. Like, wow, I mean, I'm strafing with this with my right thumb and I'm turning with the left thumb. That's unusual in today's day and age. Like that's been unusual for a long time. And exactly, like I could say I agree that maybe it's stupid to complain about it over and over because it's just the way it is. It's like you said, using a keyboard and mouse, trying to fit that onto a control stick. If the um, missing key functions and stuff, it's not the ideal way to play it, and it's maybe annoying for people to complain about it all the time. But I don't think I don't think you can just disregard their feelings on it because to them it does feel weird. It feels wonky. It feel even on the N64 controller, it's going to feel weird to people that didn't grow up with that. Um, and it doesn't ruin the legacy of like GoldenEye's legacy doesn't change. Um, it's not. See, that's what you're look. I think I see where you're looking at it differently. You're looking at it as, oh, the game aged poorly versus gaming has aged, changed. Control schemes, control innovations have happened. It's not that. What's up, T? It's not like, oh my God, GoldenEye is just like shit now. It's no, we've had all these innovations. Like I said, gave my example about the car. If you go drive a classic car versus even a basic like Toyota Corolla or Camry, that old classic car is going to drive like poo. Like you're going to feel every bump. You're going to have trouble turning. If you're not moving, it's going to be a struggle. That doesn't mean the car's aged poorly. Car could still be one of the most legendary cars of all time, but it's it's not an enjoyable driving experience. It's just not. So that's the best way. That's the best example I can give um, to this. Like I feel like I feel like it's a fair analogy. You know, yeah. If you were, let's say, like I see this old couple. They're driving a old Chevelle. That's probably the one they've had for years, and they probably drive it in the summer. They probably drive it every day, and they probably love it. But put a young 20-year-old kid in an old car, and they're gonna be like, holy shit, how do I turn this thing, like um and it's just facts. It doesn't make the Chevelle like a shit car all of a sudden. It just, compared to modern suspensions, power steering, more comfortable seats, more, better sound systems, better, heated seats, better heating, better air conditioning. It in comparison, if you had the choice every day, you could drive this, you can drive that, you're going to drive the one that's more comfortable, that has AC. Like, that's just the facts. It's not a negative to a classic car. It's just the way it was back then. And it's just, the reality is that's how it drove. Nothing changes that. Now, if you go in, like, there's people who spend tens of thousands of dollars to put modern front ends on old Camaros. So they take a modern, like 2000s and newer front suspension, and they put it on a 69 Camaro, and so that it drives way better. They put modern suspension on it. They put power steering, air conditioning. It looks like the original badass 69 Camaro, but now it drives so much better, and people spend tens of thousands, if not 20, 30, 40,000 doing conversions like that to make these cars drive so that it is fun to drive. And I mean, who cares? Like you're telling me, like, seeing HD 2D games, how awesome that looks, that, and then going back to Final Fantasy, what is it, 6? It doesn't mean Final Fantasy 6 never looked good in its life, but you tell me you wouldn't love to see an HD 2D remake of that? I know people are excited for, like, Dragon Quest, whatever that one is. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing, like, something older and being like, man, I'm so used to, like, this, and this, yeah. And it does, bruh, people don't make these complaints. Yeah, 2D games, I rarely hear complaints. Like, I think Final Fantasy VII looks like trash now, and I never thought it looked great, the actual gameplay. Seeing it now, I'm like, dang, like, they really sold those CGI cutscenes. Like, I'm still affected by those CG cutscenes in the trailers. That game does not look great to me. Now, I don't think it ever did. I don't think I was ever. There's maybe some scenes, but Final Fantasy 3, I remember that freaking cliff. You're on, like, a cliff. There's the clouds, the music. Link to the Past. I remember when you're up on Death Mountain, you're crossing the bridge, and you see far down below, you see the trees, the green trees and stuff, like tiny. Blew my mind. Is that going to blow somebody's mind that's used to playing something from today? No, it's not going to blow their mind. And I don't know. I just don't see getting upset about somebody. It's a different time. It's a different time for us. Like we said, we always worried about Robert playing Ocarina of Time. Like, is it going to have the same impact? It can't. There's no way it can have the same impact on Robert it had on us. He enjoyed the game. He said it was his favorite non-2022 game he played, but I don't know if he was just trying to gain favor with us for the not getting the Epona. But there's no way it's going to have the same impact. Like, the most impactful thing in my life, gaming related, was seeing this damn game in motion for the first time on a frickin' TV, video game series on, like, it was like Channel 19 in my area. It turned into FX later. I forget what the network was back in the day. They had a video game 15-minute show. I saw Mario 64 for the first time in motion because I'd seen the screenshots, and my mind was blown. Absolutely blown. It's not going to blow anybody's mind now. Like, Robert, he started with the Wii. You think Mario 64 is going to... it's flip, but it's correct for me. So, it's correct for the podcast, I believe. I think this is how it is in the podcast. So I flipped it for my last Juice Opinions. But if you look during the podcast, I fixed it to match that. But yeah, again, like I can't expect Robert's first time seeing Mario 64 to be anywhere near mine. So I can't be mad at him for not being blown away by it. Like that's how I feel about the whole control thing too. Um, I'm sorry, I just can't be mad about it. I can't be upset about it. I understand it. And look at the rating on this. I just noticed this. KA, kids to adults. I don't even remember that one. And then Goldeneye was T for teen, and Ocarina was E for everybody. So, yeah, I don't know what else I can say. Like, I guess I can just put myself in the shoes of somebody and say, yeah, I can understand. Um, like I said, T's here now. I brought up Shadow of the Colossus, one of my favorite first-party Sony exclusives, and um, the game controls like poo. Like the default control scheme, that game is damn near unplayable for me. Like holding triangle to shoot the bow, like it just didn't work. So I mean, and that's a game I love. I love GoldenEye, I love Mario 64, I love Ocarina of Time. Um, but I can acknowledge that there's been advancements to the point where uh, just the act of turning your camera. I mean, just that alone, from N64 to any games after, went from, you know, intervals. I don't even remember, honestly. Could you even turn? Yeah, you couldn't turn the camera, and then you had to hit the targeting button to reset your camera back behind you, because you could go into first person mode in Mario, and I'm pretty sure in Zelda, and then look around, and that was great. So once the right stick came into play with gaming, you could easily turn with the right stick. That changed gaming forever. I mean, again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it doesn't diminish the games. But I would say, when I say some games age better, that just means time was less harsh. There has been less advancements in certain areas. Like Wave Race 64, I don't know if they could make a wave running game today that controls any better than Wave Race 64. Nailed it. First try. Um, Perfect. I mean, you don't need two analog sticks, really. I mean, yeah, today's, you probably get it just to turn the camera temporarily to look around, but I don't think you could make controls any better. So it's like, how can you HD 2D games got that diminishing returns thing. First, second time you see it, cool. By the sixth game, I'm like, not this shit again. Ibsters, I don't agree with the last part, but I feel like the wow factor, it's hard to keep getting that same wow factor each time when it's, we'll say, it's the same art style, basically. It's the same art direction. The wow factor of the first time you saw it is gone. Doesn't mean that the games after it don't look good. It just means you're not going to have that awe, shock, and awe wow of the first time you seen it. Like, I don't know why we even have to have a discussion about that. Now I do disagree with not this shit again. Like that's really extreme, Ibsters. I know you have given up on some games in short periods of time. I know Rocket League for sure, Pokemon recently, but we've been conditioned to believe control schemes have peaked. Then it drops. Nintendo with the Wii remote. I've heard those controls for exactly. I said that from day one. I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be anywhere near as good as the Metroid Prime 3 in the controls aspect. I don't think dual analog and gyro is going to feel quite as good. But at the same time, we've had dual analog or 3D controls that have gotten better. You can't say that, like I said, Odyssey was better than Galaxy. Galaxy, I don't know about Sunshine and Galaxy. I don't know. It's really hard because they're kind of two different styles, but it's just, there's nothing wrong with improvements in controls. There's nothing wrong with advancements in controls. There's nothing wrong with advancements in Rumble. The original Rumble on the N64 was really good, and then it went through a couple generations where it was just buzzing vibration. And then now with the DualSense and even the Xbox One controller, I thought the Rumble was great. I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with it still feeling good to you, T. Don't feel good to me, but I went 15 years without playing it. Like it's like I said, I I'm not mad at you for thinking it still feels great. Just like I'm not mad at a younger gamer who's like, wow, this is weird. I'm looking around with the left stick, like that's weird as shit. Yeah, Sunshine. My issue with Sunshine was I thought it was overly sensitive. The range of movement was a little hard to go to walk slower, and especially when you have the flood in those special stages, I felt like the it was a little too sensitive, and Mario ran a little too fast for some of the things they wanted you to do. So, but yeah, like I said, I mean, T and Collected Control GoldenEye feels great to you. Last time I boot up my N64, I was like, wow, like this, I can't believe this. I can't even go back to inverted controls on dual analog games. Like, there's no way I could be any good at Call of Duty switching to inverted. That's why I started playing with inverted back. I don't know if it was back in the day with Gears 1 and 2. I think that's when I finally switched to have up look up and down look down, and I struggled. But now I can't go back. If that's the only thing I change, any game like Breath of the Wild, I have 400 hours in Breath of the Wild. If I went and selected inverted for looking up and down, I ain't be able to play the game. Period. I don't care. I'm not going to erase thousands, if not 10,000s of hours of non-inverted controls. You can't erase that muscle memory, and I wouldn't even want to. I'm not even going to try. Like, to me, it's like I don't think my muscle memory could coexist with both. Maybe. I mean, maybe if I every day I played two games that one was inverted, one was not inverted, maybe my brain could figure that out. I don't think it could. But even if that's the one thing you changed, I can't play a game with inverted right stick controls. And it's just a fact. And that's just one change, and nothing else changes. Returnal, one of my games I herald for its controls. If I tried to play that inverted controls, remember when you had to, remember when you went press left on the stick for your camera to turn right and shit? Like it was like the opposite. Like yeah, I can't do that. I mean, I'm sorry. So to now maybe some old school gamers complaining a little too much that should have known. I have no like I said, I have no issues with the original control options being there. I just feel like it's a missed opportunity. Getting back to GoldenEye, I think it's a missed opportunity a to have a dual analog control scheme. Just take what they did with the two N64 controllers. I don't know how much coding that would have taken. Maybe ask the Xbox guys that did the Xbox port. Hey, can we use that? Maybe they said no. I don't know, but I just to me, more options the better. And I think it would, from what I've seen of the Xbox version, it looks like they really implemented them really well. And now you're going to get more people playing GoldenEye, loving GoldenEye, appreciating GoldenEye, the game, the gameplay, obviously Xbox doesn't have the online, but I just think you get more people playing it. And if somebody's curious, they get an N64 controller for the Switch and they want to try the classic controls. I mean, more power to them. As long, I'd be mad. Like I would be mad if they weren't there. Trust me. If they weren't there, I'd be like, that's fucking stupid. Like, why would you release GoldenEye without the default controls? Especially when you have the N64 controller. Now that I would be angry about. I'm not angry they didn't include the dual analog modern controls. I just think it's a missed opportunity. I wish they had, so that more people would be like, oh my god, this is amazing. I mean, I played GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. I don't know if I played another first person game on the N64 T. Because Doom, I think I rented Doom 64. But you didn't have to aim with that game, did you? Was that still the old school Doom where you didn't aim up and down? I'm gonna wait for that answer. Then I'm gonna wrap up. I'm gonna get out of here. But yeah, I didn't play a lot. And Perfect Dark came out what 99, 2000. I mean, I don't think a ton of. I don't know how that game sold, but I don't feel like. I feel like it was just a little too late. Should have been N64 launch title or GameCube. Yeah, Turok had Turok. I played Turok too. I can't remember Turok's controls. Probably the same. Probably the same. But once, like I said, once you go 15 years without 20 years, 25 years, I mean 20 years maybe between playing Goldeneye for me, close to it. You know, once you move on from that, it's hard to go back, man. It really is. I mean, imagine playing like some early 3D games that had like still before analog sticks where you still use the D-pad, like, and then going back after controlling a 3D game with a D-pad. I know 3D World did that, but you know, it's fixed camera and stuff. You know, there's just I just don't think there's anything wrong with saying like, hey man, this like we've come a long way, and going back sometimes has different results. And like even movies I used to love as a kid. Like I used to love Spaceballs. Like me and my buddies watched Spaceballs all the time. I watched it like within the last 3 years, maybe 2 years ago. I didn't laugh one time. Like that humor did not work for me. I didn't think that movie was even. I didn't even chuckle. Like I remembered a lot of the jokes. I guess the thing that made me chuckle was the combing the desert. That's still funny. I mean, once you adjust up, it's hard to adjust back down. I think because you and Clocked are exceptions. There's not a lot of people who keep all their systems hooked up and went back and forth. Like, and honestly, like Metroid Prime, that didn't use dual analogs. But once I played the Wiimote nunchuck controls, I struggled going back to the GameCube version. That's why I sold Metroid Prime 1 and 2 on GameCube. I have the trilogy on Wii U through the Wii, backwards compatibility. That's the only way I want to play Metroid. Like, doesn't make the original Metroid trash or broken. It's just I prefer to play with the motion controls. So yeah, I can understand. I can understand like the young upcoming gamers. The Fortnite's their game. Fortnite's their GoldenEye, their Mario 64. That is sad. As somebody that's been gaming for 30 years, like I was thinking, how we always talk about, oh, this young generation, they're screwed. Like I can't imagine being a young teenage boy trying to approach girls in this day and age with all the shit going on. But I imagine when electricity started coming out, becoming readily available, and furnaces started getting installed in houses, I imagine this is me putting myself in other people's shoes. I imagine they're not gonna know how to split wood. They're gonna be screwed. Power goes out or their furnace breaks. They're not gonna know how to split wood and collect wood anymore. I'm sure there was people saying that when furnaces started getting installed, not furnaces, but the radiating heat and all that. These kids aren't gonna know how to go chop down a tree anymore. Like, I'm sure that shit happened. I guarantee it. And I just pulled that out of thin air the other day at work. I was like, man, because I was thinking about how the young generation's screwed. There's no kids going into the electrician field or plumbing or all these specialty fields, mechanics and stuff. They're having trouble with these young kids going into these fields, and we're not going to have plumbers and electricians anymore. Like, the electricians are going to be so expensive because they're going to be like one per state. That's the fear a lot of people have, because the young kids they just look everything up on YouTube, and they don't think you need to, make that your life to learn how to do that. And like metal workers stuff like that. So anyway, I gotta pee real bad, so I'm gonna stop this stream. But you know, just it boils down to like don't don't be worried. This game's always gonna be one of the greatest achievements in 3D gaming. It's always gonna have that legacy for what it did for gaming. Still utilized today. There's still elements of 64 are getting utilized in gaming today. Nothing will change that except for people forgetting history. So if somebody plays an old game and they're like, man, this feels a little rough. This doesn't feel as good as I remember. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Your taste changed, your experience changed. I honestly I can play most 2D games with the analog stick. Ori, I only played Ori with the analog sticks. Mario Maker, I have to force myself to remember I have the D-pad. I can comfortably play Mario Maker with the analog sticks. All game modes or all versions. NES, the Mario 3, Super Mario World, New Super Mario Bros. I can play all those with the analog stick, but um, obviously D-pad works perfectly fine too. So anyway, I gotta get out of here. Gotta use the potty, and appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm gonna go watch some football, rooting for the Bengals, and yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow on the podcast. We'll probably talk about all this again. Get some arguing, get some debating, get some anger, and then so yeah, we'll see you.